Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Blitz auction. This is the third and final week of the Blitz auction. Here we have the tanks for this week. We'll go over all of them. I'll let you know, whether these are good buys or not, if they're worth it in the auction or not, and yeah, just what to buy. So we'll go ahead and start with the first one here, the T-54 prototype. So this tank, about five or so years, maybe even more than that, 5 or so years ago, used to be like a really OP tank. It was like an OG OP tank, but it is not anymore. I would not recommend getting this tank. There's really no reason to get this tank at all. Pretty much, it's a pretty forgotten about tank. So I wouldn't really recommend getting this one. I mean, it's not expensive. It is a tier 8 for 4,200 after the next price drop. I mean, that's pretty cheap for a tier 8, so if you are a collector, that isn't a horrible price. But again, there's really no reason to get this tank. You're not going to play it or anything. It's just, yeah, it's not worth it. Alright, next up though we have the TS5. So the TS5 is as well a tier 8. This tank is not really the, I mean, it's okay. It's not like a horrible tank, but it's also not great. It's very slow. It's got pretty decent frontal armor. And a decent gun. This one's 6,000 here, so a little more expensive. After the next price drop, 5,500 isn't a horrible price for this thing. So I mean, that isn't a horrible price. So this one I would recommend more than the T-54, but still, I'd probably stay away from this one. I would probably stay away from the TS5. All right, next up though we have the Chieftain T95. This one here is 5,500, another tier 8. This one is a heavy tank. This tank I have, I wouldn't recommend getting this tank. I never really play it. It's another pretty forgotten about tank. There's not much reason to have it. And Action X is way better than this thing. For a hold down tier 8 heavy tanks, it's just way better to have like an Action X than something like this. So I wouldn't recommend getting this tank just because the Action X does its job way better. Oh, nice. And this one is 5,500. You can get it down to 5,000 after the next price drop, which again, for tier 8s, not horrible prices, but again, just there's not much reason to get this tank. Next up though, we have the GSOR 1008. This tank is 12,500 gold. I believe this is also tier 8. This one is pretty expensive here, 12,500 as you can see. It's not going to drop down that much, only 500. So this one's pretty expensive, but this tank is, I believe, very good. It's a pretty good tank, so this one you can decide if you are willing to spend that much. It is pretty expensive, but it is a good tank. I believe this might be the only time this tank has not been in crates, so I believe so. So you might got that going for you, that you'll actually be able to get the tank. So if you can get that much gold and want the GSOR, it's not a bad tank, so it's decent. Next up though we have the T59. This tank is pretty cheap. This is a tier 8. Tier 8, and this tank is going for only 4,500. It'll go down to 4,100. So that is not a bad price at all, honestly. It's pretty cheap. I mean, it's an okay tank. It's a decent tank. It's better than like the T-54. So it's okay. There's not much going for it, but it's a decent tank. And it's cheap. Then next up we have the T-22 medium for 17,500 gold. So this you'll probably get to drop down to 16,000 gold. So this one at 16,000 gold and 17,000 gold is very cheap. That's pretty cheap for the T-22 medium. T-22 medium is still a pretty good tank. I don't think it's anywhere near as OP as it used to be, but 17,500 or 16,000 for any tier 10 is a pretty solid deal. There's really not any like horrible tier 10 premium tanks in my opinion. Next up though we have the Keeler. This tank for 6,000 gold. I'm not sure why this is the most sold tank at all. It's the Keeler. I mean, there's like 4 versions of this tank. You also have the E75 TS. You got the Lurver. There's so many versions of this tank. So I wouldn't honestly recommend this that much. I mean, it's pretty cheap. It's a good tank as well. Like, it's a good tank. But there's just so many versions of this tank. I'm sure you have one of them. So if you don't, though, it is a pretty good deal. But if you have the E75 TS or the Lurver, there's really no reason to get this. They're all pretty similar. But I believe that is the last one. Yes, that is the last one. So that is the auction, everyone. These are the final tanks of the Blitz auction. So Let me know if you are going to plan on getting anything, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.